Well, we're looking for you to be city manager.
Oh, yeah.
Counting down.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Brisbane City Council meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so I guess we do not have requests under roll call item A, so Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
And Mayor Lenz.
Here. All right. Tom, do you have anything to report from closed session, please?
Thank you, Mayor Lenz. The council met in closed session for a personnel review and provide direction to staff following the discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to adoption of tonight's agenda. Can I get a first and a second to adopt?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, oral communications number one. There's an opportunity for anyone in the audience or online to make a comment on something that's not on tonight's agenda. So, any takers out there in the audience? No. I don't see anyone with a hand raised. Ingrid? No? Okay, well then we'll move on to the consent calendar, and we have two proclamations to be approved under the consent calendar that I would like to pull and read before the council takes a vote. So, first one is proclaiming September 15th through October 15th, 2025 as Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. Whereas the City of Brisbane recognizes Hispanic and Latina Heritage Month to celebrate the histories, cultures, and contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America, and includes indigenous people from throughout the Americas. And whereas the month includes the Independence Days of several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, Chile, and Belize. And whereas the Latino community comprises the largest racial or ethnic group in the United States, with the largest population living in California, and represents 24% of San Mateo County's total population. And whereas Hispanic and Latina people have a profound and enduring connection to their heritage, which has left an indelible mark on the economic, political, and social growth of our society, and hence the traditions, art, music, and cuisine of our communities. Now, therefore, be resolved that City Council hereby proclaims the month of September 15th, 2025 to October 15th, 2025 as Hispanic and Latine Heritage Month. Is it Latine?
Latine.
Okay. And Ingrid, you're going to be the one to accept the proclamation.
Nice to be on this side of the mic. Honorable Mayor and Council, Ingrid Padilla, City Clerk, and staff co-lead of the IDEA Committee. On behalf of the IDEA Committee and Rafael and his team from Melissa's Taqueria, they couldn't be here tonight. Thank you so much for the honor and proclamation. We want to encourage our city to continue celebrating Hispanic and Latine Heritage Month. Last Tuesday at the Community Park, IDEA and Melissa's Taqueria collaborated on an event. Rafael, using his own funds, hired a band and fed over 200 people in attendance.
Awesome.
Community member Victoria Vargas just showed up and made homemade cookies and tres leches cake. Together, we danced, celebrated, ate delicious food, and connected as one Brisbane. A big thank you to Caroline Chung, Assistant City Manager and co-lead for IDEA Committee, for making this event run so smoothly. Let's do it again next year. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was an awesome event, and it's great when folks in the community just decide to pony up and say, "Okay, I'm throwing a party for our community," and boy, yeah, people came out and had a wonderful time. So here you go, Ingrid, please, with our greatest respect for Raphael.
Are we not doing standard formation?
I guess we could do standard formation.
Assume the position.
Standard formations.
God. They're all
They
starting.
didn't do that when you had Miles, right?
Right. There we go. Thank you so much. Okay. 1, 2.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, the next proclamation is proclaiming October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas more than 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, and 1 in 2 transgender individuals experience some form of physical or sexual violence and or stalking by their intimate partner in their lifetime. And whereas the marginalization of certain groups in society, including undocumented individuals, transgender individuals, and people living with disabilities, increases their vulnerability to domestic violence. And whereas CORA staff provided more than 10,000 critical services in the past year, ensuring survivors have access to safety, shelter, advocacy, and healing. Whereas 606 adults and children received therapy to help them with domestic violence-related trauma, and CORA fielded 2,092 requests for legal assistance. And whereas intimate partner violence continues to be among the most underreported crimes, now therefore be proclaimed that the City of Brisbane and the City of Brisbane, or the City Council of the City of Brisbane, hereby designates the month of October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month to raise awareness about and encourage all community members to do their part to help rid our community of intimate partner violence. And Megan, you are a representative of CORA, and thank you for coming to our council meeting tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I think I'll let Lynn speak first. She's one of our staff members over at CORA.
Hi there. I'm joining you via Zoom and very thankful to be present, even if only virtually, to thank you for once again allowing us to bring CORA, Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, to the attention of your residents in Brisbane. I am Lynn Schutte, and I'm the Director of Quality and Strategic Initiatives. And CORA stands by its mission to be partners with you all in bringing services for your residents at no cost. Everything from hotline to housing, we provide at no cost. 24/7 hotline access, emergency shelter, supportive housing, legal services, both the legal line and actually accompaniment and representation. So your support enables us to talk to the residents every year and remind them, if you ever have a concern that you may be in a domestic violence relationship, you can call us at 1-800-300-1080. So I'm going to say it one more time, a little slower. 1-800-300-1080. Call us anytime. And I want to hand it over to Megan, who's one of our amazing board members and our board secretary.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I've been with CORA now for about 1.5 years on their board, and they do a phenomenal service for our community. They don't turn people away. They make it work, and this staff is phenomenal. So I really want to appreciate them and appreciate you for taking the time to declare October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'd just like to highlight 2 of the creative projects they have at CORA. One is called Yeah, and they work with middle school students and high school students to teach them about what a healthy relationship is. And this ensures that maybe CORE won't be needed in the future by setting up these goals and standards. And the other one is called Tony's Closet. So while CORE provides all this legal service, physical safety, and mental health, they also then help them transition into homes. And Tony's Closet is a little boutique where we collect new, unused home goods so that they can shop there free of charge and pick up everything they need so that they can create a home. So we're really taking care of our clients fully. And so I just thank you very much for recognizing October.
All right, well, thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. And then why don't you come on up and accept our proclamation, and yes, we'll get into the position. Here you go. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Thank you so much. All right, take care.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the rest of the consent calendar. Unless someone would like to move one of the items off the consent calendar for discussion, I will entertain a motion to approve items D, E, F, and G.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All righty, new business. Item H, discuss the potential installation of a camera at the community park. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to see you this evening. Per the last council meeting, Councilmember Kern requested that the council discuss a camera at the community park. In advance of that meeting and in support of your discussion, the staff report before you was prepared to give you information regarding why cameras are installed in communities, cameras that we currently utilize, case studies and uses from other municipalities, costs of systems, and best practices. We just wanted to tee up the discussion, and I think I'd actually, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, turn it over to Councilmember Kern, who was wanted to have this discussion.
Absolutely. Councilmember Kern.
Thank you for that very succinct summary of a very lengthy report. So I just want to thank staff for all the hard work that they put into this report in collecting costs and putting together all the cases from our other local municipalities. So I guess I'll just start off with the concept here. I spent a lot of time out with my dog. You're going to hear a continuing theme as a council member here. I spent a lot of time in the community with my dog, and I'm out and about. And over the course of the last year, starting with the time I started campaigning and started going door to door, there were a few incidents that had happened at Community Park. And so I started looking into some of the concepts behind potentially putting a camera there. So to tell you or to give you an idea of what the inspiration was, when I was out campaigning, so this would be August and September of 2024, there were a lot of complaints on social media and as I was going door to door from individual community members that a person was leaving raw chicken parts around Community Park and by the playground. That's a big problem for our community, not only because chicken juice, raw chicken juice itself is can be a contaminant and can contain any number of things, including bird flu. And so we didn't have police that we could dedicate to that situation. It is illegal to do that. The situation was curtailed by one other community member taking it in their hands to stop it. So the police did not get involved with that. We have now had, over the course of the last 12 months, 2 instances of vandalism on our community bathrooms in Community Park, and that's problematic for it. Earlier this summer, late this spring, we had an off-leash dog attack, another dog that was on leash, injuring the dog and the Cardoza's son. They're present here tonight. And then I myself, we had spaces rented out at Community Park, and folks had dogs off leash, and they charged my dog. My dog is a rescue pit bull that weighs in at 60 pounds and was easily able to defend herself, but it was still a problem. It took the people some time to come over and get their dogs under control. Now, in the contract, they are required to keep their dogs on leash. These were not folks from Brisbane. They were from outside the Brisbane that rented the space, but I think it's still a little bit problematic. So those are the 4 instances that has inspired me to bring this forward. So I sent staff a report, actually a project proposal on this. And some of the benefits that I've identified are some enhanced safety and security. When you have a visible security camera and signage to go along with that camera, people will change their behavior, especially from a criminal standpoint. I have pretty extensive experience with security systems on a building that I manage in Chicago as a board member. We installed our first camera in 2007, and we've been slowly upgrading the system year over year with the latest technology. The system has never, and I repeat, never solved a crime, and we've worked very closely with the police department, but it has provided very, very useful information, like time and date stamp footage when something occurred, what somebody was wearing, how they may have entered a building, what kind of car they drove away in, and just details that help the police, but it never actually solved the crime. So that's enhanced safety and security. The next item is optimized park operations. This leans into the whole graffiti issue at the bathrooms. 3 times now since I've been a resident of Brisbane in my tiny 10-year, 6-year term here, there have been damaged sprinkler heads in the park, and in the middle of the night, the park is just spraying water needlessly into the sky. With a camera there, that's something that somebody could have seen and had the water shut off. From a compliance verification standpoint, and when we're talking about parks and operations here, Parks and Recreation staff can utilize the cameras to take a look at the rental spaces over the weekends. City Hall is closed on the weekends, and we know that people rent those spaces out. There is a capacity limit on those spaces, which at times is exceeded. Cameras could be helpful there. There's some other things that we could look at, maybe some data-driven planning. We can take a look using these cameras at peak times when playgrounds are being used and when people are out there using the park early hours. And then there's some situational awareness stuff that I think is really great. And that means that if the police department needed to tune in to the park for whatever reason, right? We're not talking having a police officer sitting and monitoring these cameras, but if they needed to, those cameras are a tool there, both at the local and the county level, should they need them. And then last but not least, and this is the fun part of all this, we can use this for engagement and marketing. We are constantly trying to drive folks to our website and our digital traffic to share information. If we can have a live feed to the conditions at our community park that anyone can tune into at any time, they can see what food trucks are there, they can see, how many kids are at the playground, they can see those sort of different things that are going on. That's a boon to our website and our potential app in the future. I've noticed that many places now that are doing concerts, and I'm slipping my mind the big one that we have in San Francisco, but they also televise their concerts for people who cannot attend, and we could do something like that at Community Park. So those are some of the benefits that I've identified. I know that we currently have cameras in a few locations in town. I think it's 6 locations: City Hall and Annex, the Courtyard, Community Pool, the Marina, and the right-of-way location at Main Street and Bayshore Boulevard. I am proposing that from a security standpoint and from an auditing standpoint, we follow the exact same procedures that we are following for these cameras. If the council has other ideas on what they would like to do, a shorter term for saving the data, longer term of saving the data, whatever we think, a more frequent auditing process, I'm okay with that. So I think that's all I have to report on at this time.
All right, well, thank you, Frank, for a very detailed report, and I know you're passionate about this, and thank you for bringing it to the council's attention and wanting it to be agendized. So this is really kind of a council, I guess, since you're giving the staff report, so to speak. If council members have questions for Councilmember Kern, we can start. And Councilmember Mackin, why don't you lead us off?
I actually, first of all, I appreciate your bringing this up. We spent a lot of money refurbishing all those bathrooms, and to learn that a week or 2 later they had been trashed was really disconcerting. But I do have questions. The list, and you may not have the answers, but I'll just bring them up. The list of cameras that are already installed at the 5 locations, which are City Hall and Annex, Courtyard, Community Pool, Marina, and Main Street and Bayshore. It's not clear who's monitoring those, so that would be information I think it would be helpful for us to know. Do we feel one camera in the park would be adequate? Maybe, maybe not. Reading the other information here, some of them will actually scan and some of them are stationary. I will bring up that when City of Brisbane went to flock cameras, we had some community pushback about privacy issues. So as I read through other cities who are using cameras, I think we might get pushback regarding public access to a live feed camera. Flock cameras do not provide public access. And on some of the cities where we got information, it was Parks and Rec monitoring. Flock cameras are only monitored by the police chief and the police commander, so I think that would be an issue we'd need to iron out. In terms of the current cameras the city has, who is the one that has the authority to access that right now? The cameras that were cited with some various costs, there were two in particular that have AI, artificial intelligence, and I noted that this particular brand of, is it Quovo Solutions, was not on the list of any of the other cities. And I wondered how we happened to focus on that brand and why, versus checking into what seems to be the most prevalent is, where is it with the V? Can't remember. Verkada camera. Verkada, Arlo Pro, and Aviglion, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what type of cameras are we already utilizing at other Brisbane locations cited on the report? 5 locations, because if in fact we're already paying an annual fee for those, adding one more might cost us less than engaging with a new vendor and saying, you've got to sign a contract now. So those are my questions, and that's, you may not have all the answers, I'm sorry, Councilmember Kern, but
I literally have none of the answers.
that's okay.
I don't know anything about the tech.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Does
rely on staff for that.
Does staff have any answers to Councilmember Mackin's questions?
Yes, some, but not all. So some of the answers are that monitoring for the cameras is typically a mix between PD and Public Works on an as-needed basis. I don't have a great answer for the council related to why these particular cameras were looked at, other than they reached out and these are the ones we got. So certainly we can get more information for you. Those are the two things that I think I can speak to tonight.
All righty. Councilmember O'Connell?
I think that most of my questions are ones that were raised by Councilmember Mackin. Much more of my thoughts are on discussion and ethics, basically, and utilization of what they will provide, and to what degree, that the cameras can provide enough information to stop a crime or to identify a criminal. And it was said that, none of these cameras have solved a crime, but I think we need to look at that more deeply.
All right. Councilmember Davis?
All my questions were answered by Councilmember Kern. So, and then, everything I have is really discussion.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Madison. So let's open it up to the public. If anyone wants to make a comment, they can on this item. All right. Anyone out? Come on up, sir.
I'm Al Cardoza. We live at 132 Humboldt. I've been a resident here since 62, 64. It's a very low number.
Yeah.
But the point being, I'm sorry to say, had an occasion to walk our dog in June, and had it attacked by the pit bull that Frank was describing. Very, very tough on us, I don't mind telling you, but as I said, thank goodness my dog's okay now. But I think by having some sort of a monitoring system in place, we'll be able to give the police department a more description of, are there animals off leash at a certain time of day that maybe they can follow up on down the road? Is it the same person doing the same non-compliance with the leash laws? How the leash laws work. Right now, as I understand the leash laws, the citing is not done unless the police department are standing right there and seeing the problem. Certainly, they can't be everywhere every time. So this is going to be hopefully another tool for them to use so they can get out there and follow up on things that they see. As far as monitoring, I know that they do have to be monitored properly and have to have training for those people who do monitor, so they can work in conjunction with the police department to say, I think we have a problem here, or everything seems to be okay for now. So I think there's a learning curve here. I think we all have to kind of go through that. I'm not the guy to talk to. I don't know what that curve might be. But with that in mind, I think there's also other things that the cameras would provide us too. Are the traffic laws being obeyed properly? Is there too much congestion in a certain area at a certain time of day, what we need to address? Are there any weather problems that maybe are happening? Maybe a drain's backing up in a certain way and we didn't get a hold of it time and we didn't have a chance to tell the Public Works Department to go out there and unplug that drain. I was here when we didn't have storm drains. And the city would have a 5-foot puddle in the front of town. So as I said, I'm used to seeing things change, but on the other hand, it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes some devotion on our part to do that change. So as I said, all I'm saying is this is a good first step. I think with all the good input that you guys are putting out today, it's going to be something that we can do. It's just a matter of how we're going to do it and how much effort it's going to take to get the job done, and working with the police department to hopefully help them get another tool that's going to be helpful for them.
All right, well, thank you so much, Al.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
I have a question actually for staff.
Okay.
So how is staff engaging with the existing cameras? Are they just reviewing them if something's happened, or is there somebody actively watching cameras?
No, it's not an active monitoring situation. They're available to us if there's an incident that we need to review.
So if we were to install these kinds of cameras at the park, would you think that staff would take the same approach for monitoring as it's been doing, where they would wait for an incident, they'd hear about it, they'd go, they'd check them?
Yes, with the caveat that depending on the system, there may be also tools like AI and other things that can give you other information that goes beyond just a reactive sort of situation. So it depends on the quality of the system that you want.
Yeah.
and what you
Because
want
I
it
think
to
like
do.
some of the things that have been mentioned tonight, those things can be addressed if there's somebody who's actively watching. But like if there's somebody who's, has their dog off leash, for example, and unless the police hear about it, there's no one in real time watching to say, hey, go over there. You need to get this person. So
No.
I think it's probably like for the vandalism at the bathrooms, that's something that if you want to charge somebody with something, you look, try to get a description, whatever. I would imagine that we would need several cameras, right? We would need one facing the bathrooms. You might want one behind the bathrooms. You might want one at the facing the gazebo. One facing the picnic areas. Maybe the playground. I mean, sounds like there's, even if we wanted one where you could see vehicles, now that's a camera facing another way. So to me, this sounds like many different cameras.
Yeah, I think again, it speaks to what the council's experience, what they want to have vis-a-vis that experience. Some of the camera systems, as indicated in the staff report, do have triggers associated with audio events. So that may reduce the number of cameras that may be necessary. There's also a privacy issue that I want to explore further related to the playground. I want to make very sure that if cameras are anywhere near there, that we're taking the right steps associated with that.
So, and then we would have to figure out where we're installing them. If like we're
Correct.
on existing infrastructure, new infrastructure
Correct.
to have the camera. You know, there's a lot of open space, so
Yeah.
there's not really places where you maybe could get the angles that you want.
We'd have to explore that further.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, so if there aren't any more questions, then we'll start with discussion and then give direction to staff. So, Madison, do you want to just start? You
Well,
seem to be on a roll.
I mean, I feel really strongly against a live feed. I feel that I see all the points that you mentioned, you know, drawing traffic to our website, and it could be fun to watch them. My mind always is going to worst case scenario, and I just feel like if I was at the park with my kid and maybe I had a stalker or a neighbor I was having a problem with, and they were watching the cameras and saw that I was there and showed up, or, you know, I think there's like an element of privacy that you want to have especially when you're with your child, or even just women who are alone, who maybe they want to take their dog for a walk at night at the park, and who knows who's watching those cameras and may meet them down there. And so I just think from, you know, a safety perspective, that I just feel like any kind of live feed is something that I wouldn't support. So I'm open to hearing what the rest of you think about the cameras, but a live feed is something that I'm like dead set no on.
But would you be open to other types of camera use, Madison? Do you feel like you need more information?
I mean, I might consider it. I think like all of these other places seem so obvious to me why you would want them there. You know, if somebody is like drowned at the pool, or there's something like that a response to some medical emergency, we might want to have that. Or at the marina, it's so isolated in many respects, and there's, you know, people used to do drag race, or they used to do all kinds of racing over there, and the dumping on Main Street's really bad. So I can see all the reasons why you want it other places. I'm also kind of concerned from a legal standpoint. If somebody goes to the park, right, they trip and they fall, and they make a claim against the city, and that goes through the normal channels that we have. But now that if there's footage, how can footage be subpoenaed? Like, does it put us in a place where we could be, does it put us in a bad position? It could put us in a good position, or it could put us in a bad position, depending on what's on the footage. And so I think we have to be prepared of the scenario that somebody might ask us for the footage. And how do we handle outside entities, you know, that might subpoena us for something. So I think about that, and if the city could be liable for something.
If I may, through the chair, and Tom, you may have something to add additionally. You know, when I think about our ALPR systems, I mean, that data tends to be fairly protected, and not typically, Tom, please correct me if I get this wrong, not typically available for general access, if you will.
Well, yeah.
So, a few things. You can't, just to take one off the table, you can't have an audio device on these cameras, period, because under California law, if you have you can have it if you need it at some point, but you cannot use it unless all parties being recorded have given their consent prior. It's just like a telephone call. You can't record one end of it and not, you know, you're on your end and not tell the person on the other end you're recording them and get their consent. So audio is sort of off. if it's the concert, I'm sure there's some way to deal with that, but just having it on there day to day now. As far as camera usage, it's the law has swung back and forth over the last 20 years. The state of it currently is you can use it any place where there is not a reasonable expectation of privacy. So that gets the question: do kids at a at a kinder park, if you will, as opposed to the skate park, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy because underage kids who are not even close to adult thing, that kind of thing has not been completely litigated versus the teenager at the skate park. Is that 17-year-old, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy? That kind of thing. So the law is not real clear on how you can use them for purposes of law enforcement. It doesn't bar it at all. But at least in my very limited experience dealing with this with San Francisco about a decade ago, it could only be used to basically show probable cause to go the next step. So there is a reason we should be looking into this person because of this camera, but you could not use the camera against them at the time. Now, last distinction, and I know I'm giving you a whole lot of it's up in the air. California law is a lot clearer on the use of mobile cameras. So you're not proposing that, meaning putting it on a bus. The law is very clear on traffic enforcement. There's actually provisions in the law. But getting to your liability question, Councilmember Davis, those provisions say when you can use it, when you can't, who can use it. But that's vehicular. So in terms of just using it to prove a crime or other thing now, if you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy and you're not recording illegally, you can present the data, but the question then becomes one of, is this actually someplace where there is an expectation of privacy or the age suggests it? It just becomes a mess of how you can use the data in court. Some cities, last point, some cities put the cameras up as a deterrent. Some don't even turn them on. They put up fake cameras. And they just have a policy that they're not going to use the cameras for any other purpose than a deterrent. And they literally delete their footage every 24 hours or 48 hours. I don't know that that's good or bad. I just know some cities here do that. And again, in those instances, all I've ever heard is deterrent. They don't take the video and put it in front of a jury in court or a judge in court.
I have a follow-up question. I know we installed those cameras on Main because the dumping was really bad. Have we looked at, like, let's say we go out on Main, we see that there's a dump that's happened. Is anyone investigating the footage, or is it just simply a deterrent?
We'll look at it to see if we can glean any information out of it.
Have you ever gleaned any information?
Not that I'm aware of.
No,
It really does
can I just
depend
step
on
in?
the-
No information whatsoever?
Like license plates?
Time of day, the date it
Oh,
happened, the
no,
year
no,
it happened?
certainly
anything?
when and where, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But
And So
there's
sometimes a more
information.
detailed, yeah, thank you, Frank, for the
Yeah.
clarification.
But nothing that's
why I was
like
gonna say
gonna
that
make you arrest.
technology is, sorry, Councilmember Days, I want to be really clear. The technology now, from even 3 years ago, is light years ahead of what it was. So you used to get the grainy pictures and the motion would freeze, and now it's not just zooming in on cars going 85 miles an hour and getting their license plate clear. Put that on a fixed spot in a park or whatever, you're going to get a lot more information. Again, it's not illegal. It just depends on how it's gathered and whether there's an expectation of privacy. But it is a distinct difference from what we probably have in place currently because the technology is so much better.
And if through the chair, point back to the staff report, so this would be item H, page 35. The camera at for the dumping is really just a commercial webcam, so it only has certain capabilities.
You just mumbled that. You said what?
The camera that we have for the illegal dumping, that's a over-the-counter, on-the-shelf camera system. It's not intended to be an investigative tool.
So let's say we use the example that's been provided. There's a dog fight. and someone's dog attacks another dog, that dog has serious injuries, they end up going to small claims court or something, because I would think that that's one of the remedies, maybe to get reimbursed for your dog's medical care or what have you. In that instance, somebody is wanting to show evidence that this occurred and that dog was the aggressor. Would we even be able to provide that kind of footage to residents who, like this example that we have, that this has happened, and one of the reasons why we want to get this footage, could this footage even help someone in that particular situation?
So if the police department had a criminal charge based on a dog injuring somebody or another animal, there's nothing in California law currently that bars it as long as there's not a reasonable expectation of privacy. Again, I'm using that phrase because there's lots of interpretations depending on the particular facts at hand. But that being said, I don't know if somebody came in and said, I'm the neighbor of X and X did this, and I think you got it on my camera. I want your film, city. I don't know what would happen there. I know if you say that to your neighbor, it's fine. You can have their video if they give it to you from their Ring doorbell. I don't know if you can with the cameras, if you can use that in a non-city driven action. It can be used against the city.
Yeah.
But if it's two private parties, I don't know. I've never looked at it. I can.
All right, Councilmember O'Connell, any thoughts?
Well, first of all, if we're going to put up cameras, we're going to have to put up signs. And Councilmember Kern said every sign that goes up, one has to come down. So let's figure out what we're going to have to take down.
Stepped right into that one.
And so much of what we are looking at, I have a Ring camera on my back 40 and by my pool, and mostly I get wildlife shots, and it shows the raccoon, and then it's saying, come on, baby, and 2 or 3 babies go with it. And, and it, excuse me, it tells me when something's happened in the last 24 hours. Most of the time it's that my dog walked out there and looked around and walked back. But it's not gonna, and it could ding at me because it sees some sort of motion, but it's not gonna tell me if that's good motion or bad motion. It's just gonna say something happened. Most of the time when it says there's a person there, it's a bird or a raccoon. And yes, sometimes it's entertaining to see how many raccoons came through my backyard last night, but most of the time I don't. If I had a burglary, yes, I'd look at that footage, but I'm not sitting there staring at it all day, 24 hours a day, which is what you'd really need to achieve most of the results that you're looking at for seeing that people are letting their dogs off leash, or kids are doing some bad behavior or something. Catching someone vandalizing. And most of the time, yeah, it's going to be a stereotypical thing, a 14-year-old in a hoodie or a 22-year-old in a hoodie that you're going to see the shadowy figure go by, and it's like, okay, well, that's them. And it's unless it's a bank robbery, nobody's going to enhance the footage and put the thing up to show how tall they were and the facial profiles and all that. That's when you get the terrible shootings we have, or a bank robbery, and that's when security footage is utilized more. I don't think for our park, for the type of things that are going on, that we really need to have security footage of stuff. The chances are that unless we cover it with motion activated cameras, we're going to have anything that's useful. And so if you want to put up a sign that you might be being recorded on a camera, okay, but I don't think it's going to do any good for what we're looking for it to do. And I also disagree with some of the having the privacy issues violated, as far as always being on camera. And many cities are that way in the world, where there's pretty much cameras everywhere. Now they're utilizing private cameras and city cameras and freeway cameras and all those things. But unless you have an integrated system and spend a lot of money developing those resources, you're not really going to be doing crime prevention.
All right, Councilmember Mackin.
I'll interject some levity that if you watch British comedy, documentaries, drama, mysteries, they will always refer to, there's got to be a CCTV somewhere close by, because they have them everywhere, on businesses, pointed at the street, pointed at the front door, everywhere. That being said, there's two issues here. There's real time. Do we think a camera would stop something in progress? I'm doubtful, unfortunately. I think we might be better served, and I hate to get into signs. Please don't listen. If we said, dogs are not permitted off leash, if you see graffiti, vandalism, or dogs off leash, please call this number for the Brisbane police, so that someone who's there can report it in real time and it could be addressed. We're never going to have the resources to have someone sitting there just watching a video feed. The other purpose of a camera would be after the fact, and the usefulness there, as opposed to flock cameras where we have a license plate number that we could follow up who was driving the car. So we're not looking at cars. So in keeping with what Councilmember O'Connell said, we might get an image of someone in a hoodie. And what do we do with that? And then we can also think about Councilmember Kern, and I totally get the deterrent of a camera. And that's part of why we have some cameras at these locations. I think it boils down to, how many problems do we really have? We don't have Commander Garcia here or the chief telling us some statistics on what kind of problems have we had. Second thing we don't really have are cost factors to weigh out the cost-benefit analysis. I think one of our best crime-fighting tools is again, if you see something, call the Brisbane police, and giving people that number, because as Councilmember Kern said, a lot of the people that will rent spaces in our park are not from Brisbane. They don't know the Brisbane police number by heart. And maybe
It's
they
a majority, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So maybe they would call the police. If we say on a sign, by the way, dogs are not permitted off leash. If you see this or graffiti, please call Brisbane police immediately. And here's the number. I don't know whether that's the answer, but I think we don't have really enough information here to do anything with it at this point. So I'm not negating, I'm just saying, and privacy issues, real time, I have to echo, I really wouldn't want to see real time. I think we don't want stalkers. There's too many privacy implications. I think we're going to get a big pushback.
So often on the news, right? Even with what just happened, very recent
Yes.
history. So a crime is committed. The police don't know who that is. I mean, maybe if you're using some kind of AI technology and facial recognition, which I have real strong feelings about, police don't know who that person is. They throw it up on the national news. Can you tell who this person is? A grainy photo, and then people start calling in. Oh, my son was acting weird, and I think that it could have been, like what we've just seen in the national news lately. And it's family members who are calling and turning somebody in for something. But unless you have like that kind of reach and it's that big of a crime, you see all the time in the East Bay, they go and they are in a convenience store, they rip out an ATM or whatever happens, and the footage goes online and they ask the public for their help, And you would do that when it's like something really egregious, which I don't feel like our park is not I don't think our park is really a hot spot where we would, God forbid, have a crime of that nature where then you're like going to the public. I mean, I guess you could do it on residents, or something like that, but I just know so often people, police departments, they see people on footage and they got a description, they got a visual, but it's really hard to connect that someone's face with someone's identity. I actually, a few years ago, had a group of guys case my house when I was home. They thought nobody was home. I was living on Humboldt. And 4 guys came to my house, and they kind of were on Humboldt, and they pulled in the driveway. One got out, was banging on my door. And I was of the opinion of like, just don't answer the door. And eventually I answered the door and realized very quickly what was happening. It was very obvious. He was shocked that I answered, and then the response that was coming out of him made no sense. And so immediately all of the warning bells were going off. We knew later that there were a bunch of other guys in a vehicle because of cameras that were around. And I called the police, and they were able to track down this vehicle in town. This was before the flock system. And they didn't have anything in the vehicle that said these people are about to commit a robbery, like anything to break in, but they were not giving a good story to the police. So they took pictures of all of their IDs. And when they compared them, they realized some of them were on probation, some of them had committed robberies before, and they just said, listen, just get out of town. We know you're probably here up to no good. You need to leave. So it wasn't until our police department had meetings with multiple other police departments in the county and said, we had these individuals come into Brisbane. Here's their IDs. Do you guys know anything about these individuals? And it wasn't, and then they got the vehicle license plate and all that. It wasn't until that happened that then they were able to connect these individuals who had committed crimes in Belmont, Millbrae, San Bruno. They had caught them all on the camera, but nobody knew who they were. They still were unsolved. So many robberies are unsolved because they can't tell who those people are. And it wasn't until they got the license plate and they actually got all the IDs. And so it really was just like that in the moment calling the police department is what helped solve all these other crimes. But if it was just footage, there's nothing that would have been able to be done about that. So I don't know if it's a crime, if we're really looking at a crime deterrent or solving crimes, maybe a deterrent, but solving crimes, I don't know that it's going to yield that.
Excuse me, but yeah, I think you illustrated a point. We have flock cameras now. So those same 4 individuals, if they were driving out of town and you knew what kind of car it was, even vaguely, now our police could file a report, access the flock footage, and determine who it was by the license.
Or at least the driver.
Or at least the driver. So we're a little bit ahead, but the difficulty is in a park setting, we're not dealing with vehicles. And if it's animals, I'm not even sure. I know San Francisco, I could tell you my story about animals. They will not respond to animal calls. So our greatest asset are citizens who are concerned enough to take their phone and call the police and be witnesses and try to stop altercations and step forward and do something. That's way stronger right now than the cameras, just like your phone call to the police.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a suggestion, I think that if the council is interested, public engagement on this issue is, I think, vitally important should the council wish to further have this discussion. So I wanted to throw that out, that any process related to next steps, I think, requires a pretty robust community engagement.
Another
you.
survey.
Um,
I feel like this town's getting surveyed out.
possibly.
I mean, we do a lot of
Do you
surveys.
have more?
Yeah. Frank,
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. Of course I do. So I know that the five of us spend time here 2 Thursdays a month. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. I've been spending time in squad cars in our town, doing ride-alongs. And I will tell you that a camera has never solved a crime anywhere. We just had a person that was murdered in Utah, and they said, oh, we don't know who this person is, but it's a piece of evidence, like any other piece of evidence, that's used as a tool for the police to solve a crime. So I'll go back to my original statement. These are not intended to solve a crime. These are intended to be a piece if they are needed. So to Councilmember O'Connell, who said, your quote tonight was, cameras everywhere. Well, this is a fun sort of primary research study that I did. So I'm out and about in town with my dog a lot. And so I got one of those thumb clickers that you see at concerts with, bouncers that let people in the doors. And so I'm going to give you some statistics tonight. So on August 12th at 6:11 p.m., the date and time are important because people can verify this from their home monitoring systems. I walked Mendocino Street East to Alvarado Southwest to Visitation North and back to Mendocino Street East. That's where my home is. That's 0.72 miles on one side of the street. I walked on one side of the street and I counted the number of camera impressions that I was on. That's not number of cameras. That's not Ring doorbells versus cameras. If a house had a monitoring device, I counted it. Again, 0.72 miles, 21 impressions. The next day, I went out at 10:15 in the morning, and this is the big one, on August 13th at 10:15 a.m., and I walked Mendocino East, past Councilmember Davis's house, onto San Bruno North, past Councilmember Mackin's house, to San Francisco East, to Santa Clara South, to San Bruno North, back to Mendocino West. That's 1.18 miles. At 10:15 in the morning, 42 camera impressions. I'll give you one more. This one's a fun one too. This is at the Ridge. So this was on August 20th at 5:40 p.m. Again, I'm calling out the dates and times so people can look at their cameras. I'm on there, clicking away. One side of the street, Mission Blue East, Calipe Court North, Silver Spot Drive West, to the Stairs, to Butterweed Lane East, to Lupine Valley Court North, to Silver Spot Drive West, to Calipe Court South, to Mission Blue West. That was at 5:40 p.m. That was 26 cameras. Just so you guys know, over an 8-day period, I did 10 walks, totaling 9.59 total miles within the residential area of Brisbane. I did not walk in Crocker Park. Number of camera impressions on one side of the street, 9.59 miles, one side of the street was 224. Here's what I can't tell you about those cameras. Some were recording audio because they're Ring doorbells. So my audio was being recorded. I was probably talking to the dog. I can't tell you the make or model of the cameras. I can't tell you where they're being stored. I can't tell you where the data is being stored. I can't tell you who's viewing it. I can't tell you where it's being shared. And I can't tell you when it's being deleted. So when we're talking about cameras everywhere, they're here already. And those cameras, whether or not you know it, through our website, we have an application process where we can connect them with the police department. So my point here is we already have cameras in the city. We're recommending one more, just one. And we can do this on a trial period. I like to test and refine. We can test this and see how it goes. Put one in, see how it works. Do it on a trial basis. If you're uncomfortable with that, maybe we kick this over to a subcommittee of some sort. We do an ad hoc committee. We can take a look at some legal ramifications. We can take a look at privacy. Maybe this is an option for us. Anyhow, I just wanted to call out that no matter where I went, I was being surveilled, and I don't know by who. What we're doing here is trying to do a transparent level of surveillance. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that, Frank. You had mentioned that you have ridden in the patrol cars, right? And have you gotten any feedback from anyone in our local police department about the camera?
The chief
Okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, I did. I spoke with the chief about the camera, and so did Jeremy, and I think so did Christina. And the concept here is she does not have the personnel. We know our police department is stretched thin. We cannot have personnel monitoring this feed. That would be impossible and cost prohibitive, and we just don't have that. So again, this would be something that would be collected, stored for the amount of time that the council thinks is appropriate, and then deleted.
And if I could add to that, staff thought it was appropriate for the council through the Councilmember Kern's request to have that discussion. We didn't, so, you know, my point being that this isn't a request of the police department, but we will support whatever decision is made by the council.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was a good call out. The police did not bring this forward. I'm bringing this forward.
If you're proposing one camera, because to capture everything in the park, it's going to require multiple. So if you're proposing one camera to start, what do you want to film? What area do you want to capture? And where do you think that camera is going to be positioned?
I am not the technology expert on this, so I'm probably not going to use the right verbatim. However, I believe if we had a fisheye style camera, this is the kind of camera that you will see used at, I think Ocean Beach has one, and I think Montara has one too. So if you're a surfer and you want to check the conditions, it's that style camera. And we mounted it somewhere on the gazebo. We would capture 98% of the park, but not at a level where we would have facial recognition or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I'm not a technology expert.
You know, so before the meeting, you know, I had reached out to Frank just to get his thoughts about, you know, why this was important to him. You know, originally, I was of the position of, you know, I'm not really interested in having more cameras, and I respect the privacy, you know, concerns that all of you have raised. You know, recently I was on vacation, and they had these webcams, you know, where there was an image of a video of the weather conditions at a trailhead. And I thought, oh yeah, you know, that's really helpful information. But then, you know, this is why these discussions are so important, because, you know, sometimes you come in with a certain kind of perspective, and that's why it's good to have the deliberation, and you pick up on things that you didn't think about. You're right, Madison. We have done a lot of surveys, and perhaps, you know, the community is a little saturated with, you know, so many surveys. But I also see where you're coming from, Frank, where if it was a camera that was just one and it was a fisheye and you couldn't really make out the details, more of just, you know, perhaps providing some public benefit, if it's a concert or some event that we have at the park, such as what we had the other night. That would have been nice for people to see that at home. So, you know, so yeah, I mean, you know, this is one of those situations where you're kind of like right in the middle, and you could go one way or the other, and trying something out to see if it makes sense, or, you know, is you know, a real negative for folks in the community. You know, maybe that's what we do. We give it a shot and see how it plays out. Or we could do a survey and do like a quick one and get that information and use that as the basis for whether or not we would do the one camera that Frank is suggesting.
I feel a live feed is just, I think that the potential fallout and the potential drawbacks to me really outweigh any of the benefit. Like, if I want to see what's going on at the park, half the town can see the park from their house, and you just, I mean, if you're interested in going, you go. If you're not interested, you don't go. I think if we were going to have some kind of camera, it needs to be something where you can make out details, because it's for us internally to use. And I would say, to me, it makes sense that it's got a good shot of the picnic areas, because that's where we have a lot of people who are coming from out of town, big parties. They might get out of control. They might be drinking, whatever. They might be having a lot of trash, not cleaning up. Maybe, and then you might get like the bathroom. So if somebody was going to do some kind of vandalism, you might be able to kind of get that area. That's to me where I think it would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I really don't think like it would, you know, we had an instance in town where kid was walking home from school, 8 years old, by themselves. Someone pulled up and tried to get that kid to get in their car. People like that, they live everywhere. And I don't want to give them more tools to see if I send my son down to play at the park and meet a friend, and he's 10 years old and he's there by himself, and somebody from their house can look and see that there's a kid alone. I don't want to make their job easier because somebody might want to see if there's something cool happening at the park. Like, I just think that in the wrong hands, like, you want to think that everyone is a great person. You want to think that everyone in your community has good intentions, but it's just not true. So I feel so strongly against a live feed. I don't see, I would feel horrible if we found out that something happened because somebody was watching and then used that information to target somebody that was at the park. If we want to use it to deter crime or to have information that might help us if a mishap happens, that to me is a better use for a camera. But I think that is something that we should talk to our community about.
Mr. Mayor, in the interest of time, because we could go all night discussing this, can I suggest, I'm not for or against. I hope I made that clear. I think right now we have a lack of information. So if we could have this put on a future agenda, have our police chief or commander speak to what type of events happen, have something in terms more nailing down the cost for one camera, maybe two cameras, no live feed, maybe utilizing, apparently the 5 cameras we have are non-sophisticated. What would be the cost of installing 1 or 2 other cameras? Because we have no idea. This could be publicized as something that's going to be on the agenda. The public can attend and weigh in. I think that's the best way to proceed, is we need some more information.
Agreed.
You're good with that, Frank?
I can get behind that.
Okay, great. Okay, so sure you have
Thank you.
enough information. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to considering providing feedback on the draft artificial intelligence mission statement and guidance on phase 2 of the city's artificial intelligence work plan.
Good evening, Mayor Lenz, council members. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some slides. We'll let Angel get that set up. This is my big debut on Channel 27. So.
You're doing great.
Go easy on me. All right. I am here to present on what the City of Brisbane has been doing the past few months with AI. Angel, you can go ahead to the next slide.
AI can't move the slides
guess
forward
not.
yet.
Yeah. It's
Well-
spazzing out.
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. It's
That's right.
very weird.
That's right, Angel Libera, right?
Thanks,
AI.
Angel.
Uh-huh. I was like pushing enter or next.
Good.
Our tech team.
Okay, presentation over. We have our own AI.
Oh, thank you, Angel. Sorry.
She's just
I don't know
I.
what's going on.
I can start from slide 3.
Oh.
No, that's totally fine.
Don't go back. It's weird.
Thank
What
you.
are those holes?
Okay, so the purpose of tonight's discussion is to discuss what we've been doing
There
with
we go.
AI for the past few months. Thank you, Angel. We'll go over our proposed AI mission statement and then discuss what we might do moving forward with our rollout plan. Slide 3, please.
If I can get there. Keyboard is not responding to it, even though I tested it earlier. One moment.
We believe you. You're always very on top of things. So here we go. Okay, so just some background. Everyone is familiar with what AI is, artificial intelligence. These are computer systems that can mimic human intelligence. There's Alan Turing up on the top there working on a computer back in the 1940s. So this isn't new technology. These are things that have existed, that have been a part of our daily lives for a long time. On the other hand, generative AI is fairly new, and this is technology that can create new content based on patterns that it has learned from large amounts of data. This became a household topic in 2022 when ChatGPT was released to the general public. Tonight's conversation will focus specifically on generative AI tools and Microsoft Copilot. So some background about how Brisbane has been using AI for the past few years. In 2023, our innovation team created our AI subgroup, which developed and shared its first artificial intelligence appropriate use policy. The following year, a few of our staff members attended the GovAI Coalition's first ever annual summit in San Jose. For those of you who aren't familiar with the GovAI Coalition, it was founded by a group of City of San Jose employees who saw a need for government employees or folks in the public sector to have some guidance as to how to use AI appropriately in their jobs. It's a fantastic resource with monthly meetings, committees and working groups. They have a website with example AI use policies. They have a vendor AI registry, a lot of great information on there. So attending this summit in December of 2024 is what helped sort of guide our mission statement, which is on the next slide, please, Angel. So the bones of this mission statement really came from the idea that AI is just another tool in our toolbox that we can use to serve our constituents as best we can. And we looped in some of Brisbane's values, which is being transparent and remaining, having integrity with what we're using here in the city. And of course, keeping our staff educated and up to date on emerging technologies. And I'm happy to pause here if we want to read the mission statement and reflect and discuss, or I can continue and we can have discussion at the end.
You can keep going.
Okay, next slide, please. So our AI work plan is composed of 3 phases: our co-pilot working group, our rollout and ongoing education and training. Next slide. So phase 1 was our co-pilot working group. This was completed at the end of August, and it was inspired by the state of Colorado's Google Gemini case study. It was a 3-month testing period of Microsoft Copilot for 6 of our staff members. And our goal was to explore how Copilot worked for us, if it saved us time, if it was a useful tool, and if it had any return on investment. Next slide, please. Phase 1 consisted of a few steps. First of all, we chose our tool. Microsoft Copilot was a very easy decision because it already exists within the Microsoft environment. So it doesn't pose any security concerns. It already exists inside of Microsoft Outlook and Word and OneDrive and SharePoint. So it very easily integrated. Our next step was to find our very interested staff members who are interested in learning a new tool, and we're dedicated to attending our bi-weekly Teams meetings in which we went over our successes or our questions. We're also really lucky to have a few guest speakers attend these meetings, one of which were our Copilot experts at Insight, which is our IT vendor. She was online with us for about an hour and a half answering all of our questions about how to use Copilot. Another one of our guests was John Mazza, who I'm sure you know is the president of the Brisbane Lions Club, is also an AI fanatic and technology expert. So They were really great guest speakers to have. Next step in the phase was to collect data. So we designed a weekly survey. It was ideally designed to be taken after every interaction with Copilot, but we're all busy and have a lot to do. So at the very least, we wanted it to be taken once a week. And then we can go to the next slide to talk a little bit about that data. So the main tasks performed included drafting or proofreading emails, summarizing long email chains, locating emails or attachments, and summarizing Teams meetings. Over 3/4 of the time, staff found Copilot easy to use, and we saved either mostly 10 to 20 minutes or other, which means we saved more than an hour, or Copilot cost us time because we were trying to figure out how to use the tool, and it doesn't always do what we want it to do. Most of the time, less effort was spent on these tasks, with Copilot rather than not using Copilot. And almost 90% of the time, the results were found to be accurate, and we did not report any security risks or biases. Yes?
So question, when you, during this, this slide, and it says how much time did you save, 10 to 20 minutes or other, is that during the week or per each task they were performing?
Per task.
Per task.
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't know how many tasks they did on this slide.
Ideally, the survey was to be taken after one task. So the first question in the survey, which by the way, you do have copies of the results. I apologize that they were not attached to the staff report, but you should have them there on your dais. So ideally, it was supposed to be taken after every task. The first question is, which task were you completing? And then the questions that followed are related directly to
So
that
this
task.
isn't a total of over the week
Correct.
that it saved, that you saved 10 to 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
thank
this
you.
is per task that they were doing.
Do you have any sense of how, like, do you have any sense of those numbers? Like how widely Copilot is being used?
Can you,
Like how many tasks? Like, do you have any idea on that?
how many tasks were done?
Yeah, like if you started using Copilot and someone's using it 5 times a day.
We didn't collect that information. That would have been nice to know.
Okay.
I personally was using it probably 10 to 15 times a day, but I didn't think to ask what
So if you
others.
like, because 10 to 15 times a day at 10 to 20 minutes,
It's a
I
lot of
mean,
time.
that really gives you an idea of the scope of impact, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great question though.
And I guess it would probably differentiate with your job. Like
Mm-hmm.
you, in marketing communications, you might use it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but in another position, you might not use it as much. But it's good to know, especially if we're going to be doing first license. One of the things in the staff report is licenses for certain employees, and to figure out how you say who needs the license, it would be good to know who's using it the most. Sorry, just a
No, it's
tangent
great.
there.
I'm
but-
happy to discuss. I think that even when folks were, if they had time constraints and were only taking it once a week, it was still per one task. And then they would just, block out an hour of their time once a week and say, okay, I did this task. This is how long it took me with Copilot. These are the issues I ran into. These are my successes. So ideally, this information should be giving us how much time was saved per task. Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions on this slide?
I do have a quick question. So, like, when did you test, say, just writing it, doing the task yourself, and then applying Copilot, and then comparing, and
Ooh, that's a good question.
Most of the tasks, I can speak for myself, most of the tasks I used it for were things that I did very regularly, and I tried to see how Copilot would do it with me. Usually in the beginning, it was slower because I had to prompt it. I had to make sure I was asking it the correct question. Sometimes I had to feed it information. And I would, estimate, okay, this is something I do pretty regularly, and I know it takes me X amount of time. And then this time it has taken me this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
but do you feel that what Copilot put together would have been similar to what you would have done if you didn't use it?
Most of the time it was better. There was no proofreading errors or no spelling errors, things like that. It sounded a little bit clearer and had better tone. But typically I would write, let's say, a draft of something myself, and then I would put it in Copilot and have it edit it for me. That was usually what I was using it for.
Yeah.
I didn't use it to create new content most of the time.
Yeah, and I know that many people, right, that's what they'll do.
Mm-hmm.
They'll use Copilot as a Copilot, but then you could, as it becomes easier to use, and it's like, hey, this is saving me a lot of time.
Yeah.
Rely on that crutch a little bit more, and then it's like, well, you just throw out a few words, write me this, whatever, staff report, and here you go.
Yeah.
All
Which
right.
is it depends on if it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and
accurate is
it's-
accurate.
And it's
States the
a good
point.
job. It's useful, then
Doesn't matter.
is it on the principle that you do care about it because like it wasn't written by a human, or you know?
It's a
Yeah,
great
but there's also
question.
the fail rate too, and I don't mean to interrupt here, but I mean, you used to work at the marina, which is amazing, right? And then I was working closely with Jeremy. He's going to laugh now, but I was working closely with Jeremy, and I was like, Jeremy, I need data on all the marinas, all of them. And so I tried to use AI to do that. AI couldn't do it.
No, it's not.
So, you know, it's failing a lot as much as it's succeeding. So, anyhow.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
where it, yeah, that's where the human part comes into play. You got to make sure that it's
You have to prove, right? You
have to prove.
It is just a tool.
It's just a
yeah,
tool.
Copilot's proofing, and you got to proof the
Yeah.
Copilot.
Yes. Yes.
I have
ma'am.
a question, if I may. It's interesting. Thank you for the additional sheets. And one of them that's really caught my eye has to do with security risks. It's one thing if AI is giving you a response. Do we know if AI, how can I put this, catalogs requests that someone could actually infiltrate that data to see what a city government is doing?
Okay, so I'm gonna say back to you what I think you're asking me. So let's say I have Copilot open, and I'm prompting it a question, and it's helping me, draft an email or edit a staff report or something like that. That prompt is then saved. I don't know how long it's saved for. I can definitely look into that. I don't know how somebody might infiltrate that, because Copilot has the same amount of security as our Microsoft environment does.
Which is very little. I mean, generally, how many times is Microsoft hacked? All the time. Security patches. So I'm just curious because it's governmental, and we know that bad actors worldwide are targeting governmental agencies. Would they specifically try to come after tiny little Brisbane? I normally would say no, but collectively, what's in Brisbane? A tank farm. So sometimes I go, let's not think small, let's just think of possibilities. So I'm just curious if there, and if you don't have the answers, that's okay. So much of this is new, but the security, maybe that's a question to ask Microsoft. How long is evidence of the request and the material requested retained, and when is it retired?
They just said that, I just read an article that now the police can access, like they can subpoena, they can access your ChatGPT, or actually, I think ChatGPT is they're using their artificial intelligence on everything that you're searching, and they are submitting things that they feel is, you're trying to plan a crime or something, they're sending that in. So definitely can be accessed from other places, but I think that's where the council puts guardrails on what type of information we feel comfortable with city employees supplying ChatGPT.
That's exactly where I was going next, was are you giving staff in learning about this? Because they're all learning. You've given us the stats. They want to learn. And it could be very, very useful. But when we get into sensitive information, which maybe they're writing a report and they say, okay, I've got this information and this, write a report for me. Save them 45 minutes writing the report, but it's got very sensitive data. And as Councilmember Davis brought up earlier, do we have liability there? Where, say that the sensitive data is a party or a developer or an entity, and suddenly that's in cyberspace. So I think the point well taken. We need to think about what restrictions we want to convey to staff. These are the type of things maybe you don't want to be using AI.
That's a great point. And I do get into staff education
So
a little bit
please.
farther along
Yeah.
in the presentation, but I'm happy to continue this discussion. My question, I suppose, for council is, what might we be communicating about in Outlook, for example, that we could not be communicating about in Copilot, as that information is already in this environment?
That's a good
Does
point.
that make sense?
That is a great rhetorical question.
And I don't know the answer. And
Yeah, that is an amazing question.
I'm happy to look into it more about specific security concerns.
Does Insight, I mean, that would be interesting to get their feet, because there are like cyber people, right? So they
That
might
is-
be a good people
I
to
can't
ask.
say how good of a question that is because you've already got it in Outlook, so they already have access to it.
Correct. Theoretically,
So,
a
and
cyber
yes.
attacker would already be looking into all of our documents.
Molly's got an assignment.
But it's a good question that maybe an employee might be, they might be giving a little bit more information to Copilot than they would in Outlook, because they're, our Copilot is only available to ourselves. Like, I can only see my SharePoint, the things that I have access to, and only I can see my own prompts. I can't see what Christina's doing. I can't see what anybody else is doing.
Is there a way that if you have a department head or a supervisor, that they would have access to something, a staffer?
I think it would be the same permissions as, sharing a folder.
Okay.
But that's a great question.
Continue.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Now that phase 1 has been completed, we like how much time we're saving. We like how easy the tool is to use. Our options for rollout could be access to all full-time employees at $35,000 a year. Option number 2 is access to some employees. This would ideally be at the discretion of department heads. So maybe finding our super users or people who are really motivated to learn this new tool or really have a lot of time that can be saved using this. The third option is mentioned in the staff report, but not in the fiscal impact section. But I still think it's worth mentioning. It's Copilot Chat, which is like a pay-as-you-go option. Some government entities do have access to this, specifically our neighbors to the north, but it doesn't seem to be available on our licensing platform at this time. But like I said, I still think it's worth mentioning because things in the AI world change so quickly, and maybe this could be an option down the road. So it's something I think we can keep on our radar. Next slide. Okay, education. So before any rollout happens, we strongly recommend that our employees are empowered with education as to how to use these tools. Innovate US is a fantastic resource. They create all sorts of free online self-paced courses specific to public sector employees. This course in particular is about using generative AI at work as a public professional. I took the first few modules of this course. It's very interactive. It makes you act, for example, as a planner, somebody in the planning department, or maybe somebody in the city manager's office as a communications person who has a task, and they have you open Google Gemini and open ChatGPT and take a public PDF that's on your website and put it in to whatever tool you're using and teach you how to use a prompt. For example, change the tone to be understandable for somebody in the 5th grade, things like that. So just really real-time, useful applications. Ideally, employees would take this course and provide a certificate of completion before being given access to, let's say, Microsoft Copilot. And for those who might not receive access to Copilot, this would at least give them more information as to how to use ChatGPT properly. Any questions? No? Next slide. A few other steps that staff can take with rollout is to create a new web page that's dedicated to AI. There are many states and counties that have a web page like this. It contains our mission statement, maybe a quote from leadership, such as city manager or mayor or council member. It can have a list of different AI software that we're using at the city and how it's being used, and maybe a link to our AI use policy, so it's really easy for employees to find and for public to see how we're using it. We would recommend staff refer to the Gov AI Coalition's vendor registry when procuring new AI software. We can explore the possibility of adding a disclaimer to any content that's created with AI, And then, of course, reviewing and editing our AI use policy as needed. Next slide. All right, phase 3. So once folks have access, they're going to want to know how to use it and know how to use it correctly. So one of the ideas we have is to provide AI office hours. This is a dedicated group of employees who can be online every other week at the same time and just have a Teams meeting where employees can join and ask questions about Copilot specifically or any AI or technology questions they have. We recommend that all staff members, really anybody in the public sector, become members of the Gov AI Coalition. It's free, and like I said earlier, they just have a ton of great resources. We can continue developing our internal resources, such as our prompt library. When it comes to onboarding with HR, we can have new employees sign our AI use policy and then also take that Innovate US course and provide a certificate of completion. And finally, we can explore starting a county-wide AI group. We know that there's a little bit of appetite for this in the county. As far as we know, we're one of the first cities that's really taking these steps to implement generative AI into our work lives or our workplaces. And so I think it would be a great idea to have this community where we can share our best practices or our challenges and just have a place where we can meet together. Next slide. Okay, another survey. We love surveys here. So this is separate from our 3 phases. We gathered some information from our employees generally about how they were feeling about AI. And we found that we have some folks that are really curious about it and still learning and excited. Over half of our respondents are already using AI tools. That's 27 people who are using, the majority of them are using ChatGPT and using it for tasks like research and information gathering and writing or composition. Almost 3/4 of our respondents reported saving time on tasks ranging anywhere from 5 minutes to over an hour. A few of our employees don't feel comfortable using AI and don't know how to use it yet and are requesting basic intro and training and examples as to how others are using it.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So you mentioned ChatGPT. So with this policy, would you say like the only generative AI tool that is endorsed by the city is Copilot?
That's
So
a
that would
great
be like
question
the-
for discussion. I would say that if we need help with something that is still internal, that it should stay with Microsoft Copilot. And if it's something that doesn't have any sensitive information, probably it's okay to use ChatGPT as long as they've taken the certificate or taken this class and know how to use the tool. They know that
ChatGPT is free.
Correct. Up until a certain amount. I think you can use a certain amount of data.
Yeah, and it like resets the next day, or if you need to get like upgraded, that's a different thing. But so, I mean, if people aren't using it, I guess it would depend on how much people are using it. But to me, that's a free tool, and Copilot is $31 a month per employee.
Mm-hmm. The benefit of Copilot is that it integrates in all of the apps, and it's basically like a little assistant. So it can schedule meetings now. It can locate documents in your Outlook. I don't know how your guys' Outlook looks, but mine's kind of crazy.
Oh, I don't use it.
It's been it saves a lot of time in just finding things sometimes. I could go on and on about how beneficial it is to have something inside of your environment that knows where all of your things are and how to find them.
So with the transparency element that you mentioned, it says in the staff report that we should use transparency when generative AI has contributed substantially to the development of a work product.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say like there's an article in the Star, and just like you mentioned, you write it up, you throw it into ChatGPT, it spits out a clearer, better version.
Mm-hmm.
Would we then, or a staff report spits out a clearer, better version? Are we then putting on staff reports like this report was developed with the use of Copilot, or are we putting that at the end of articles?
Sure. I mean, you can do it different ways. I mean, my hope is that, and I think there's a good distinction that you just provided. I'm not sure that simply editing a staff report for clarity is necessary to say that related to the use of AI. But I certainly think if we're doing substantial research, or big tasks like that, I think it is necessary to say that, partially to just be transparent and also partially to make it clear that there could be errors associated with that work.
One,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, one question. You want to respond to that? Go ahead, respond if you want to.
I was going to say that I do feel like an AI disclaimer will eventually be like the Prop 65 disclaimer that's on every product in California, where it will just lose its meaning eventually because it's going to be on so many things. So I don't know the answer to that question, or when it's appropriate to put it on and when it isn't. I think that we can do something at least by letting folks know, like through the website, for example, on the web page, that it is being utilized by our employees.
And I think that's where maybe there's more feedback, but like maybe we continue to revisit this because there may be something that the council feels is appropriate for employees to use AI for, and other things in which we feel that maybe it isn't. Not just from like a security standpoint, like don't use it to write closed session packets, maybe, I don't know, but also stuff that you think that is worth like research, I've put stuff in there and it has made things up, like totally made things up. I've actually asked it to transcribe an article word for word. I tried it with the blast from the past, and I said, like, here's a picture of an article, transcribe this exactly. And it made up things that were not even in there. And unless you're really looking at it closely. And so...
Yeah, but that's not really utilizing it as a tool to help you, in some ways. As you're looking at more creation when you did that, right?
Well, I just said take here's a picture of this page. I took a picture. Now type up what's here.
Okay.
Type up what's on this page. And then you look at what it types up and you look at the original content. Things, words, sentences. So you have to be careful because it could it sometimes will say, like, you send it something, analyze this and condense it back, and sometimes it'll tell you things that were in that work that were not in that work. It'll say, oh, this such and such happened in this story, and then if you read the story, that thing never happened in that story. So it does spit out things that aren't true. Most of this, I would say 85% of the time, it's pretty spot on. But there's that 15% that can be troublesome. So,
And that's Chat GPT?
That's Chat GPT.
Yeah.
I don't know how Copilot works.
They all work essentially in the same way. And you're correct. They hallucinate is what that is called. The technical term
they
is
do.
when they just make up new information. And that did happen to us using Copilot a few times. So I think that's why it's really important to have staff who really understand that it's a tool that can make mistakes. And we need to remain vigilant when we're using it, but it's not a reason to not use it at all.
Yes.
I believe.
Frank?
I want Molly to have the opportunity to finish her presentation.
We're almost done.
Okay.
Were there any more questions about this slide in particular? Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is the conclusion. We are looking forward to continuing on our intentional and phased approach to integrating generative AI tools into our workplace. We're going to continue prioritizing transparency and staff training, and of course, keep council updated with how rollout goes. Next slide. Oh, and that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
I did try to
Molly.
create a nice image of us as AI, but it
So
didn't work.
I have one question. When somewhere in the staff report, I remember reading that you said it was environmentally friendly to a certain degree, but are we looking at the impacts of using AI on our environment as a whole, as far as electronic CPU usage, Google's, cloud storage, those kind of things? Because it's a very real problem that going to AI as a world is causing the world. And I'm wondering if we're looking at that.
Great question. I don't believe that anything that Brisbane as a city can do will solve the negative environmental impacts that AI has. But I did think it was important to include it in the mission statement, as Brisbane is a very environmentally forward-thinking community, and I thought it would be a disservice to not include that in the mission statement. We don't monitor how different our electrical output is right now after using Copilot more. I'm not even sure how we would do that, but we can look into it, certainly.
I don't think that it's really tied to that. I think it's like the data centers, right? That power. It's in other communities, right? In Georgia, they have
It's
that
causing a problem
Yeah.
everywhere, but certainly impacting other communities and will be impacting our grid in our community as it moves forward. And I just think about that. And, personally, and this is more in discussion, but I don't think we're really making a decision here,
No.
right?
Just giving direction.
I tried it when I was having to write articles. And, I took some information at a meeting that I went to about advanced air mobility. And I wanted to put that into an article that people could understand, that I wrote about for the Luminary. And I took what I thought was the important parts from this seminar that I was at and put it in, and it took my completely readable document and almost word for word put it back into the seminar bullet points, which obviously was written on ChatGPT or using AI, and it basically reprinted the original seminar that I went to that wasn't written for lay people. It was written for a technical group, and it put it back into that format. It's like, well, that's not what I wanted. So it's very interesting on what it can do, and so much of it, I'm sure you could write an article and then, or a email and then say, make me sound perky, or make me sound serious, and it would rewrite it to make it sound upbeat or positive or downbeat. And you can do that to influence how that email or that meeting notes are. And to me, that changes what a person's impression is of what you're writing, of what you're trying to convey. And everything we're trying to convey is information to another person, whether it's an email or a staff report. And I think how an individual looks at that information and conveys it in writing is very different than what a computer or AI is going to. And I think that's where some of the issues may lie in using that technology.
May I make
Yeah.
a comment? I want to address the environmental side because I'm on the board with PCE and we talk about this all the time. The anticipated increase in electrical demand is 25% more. And the difficulty is that we were counting on wind power, which has been squashed by the current administration. We were counting on solar, which has been squashed by the current administration. And the expansion of environmentally friendly, sustainable sources of energy, which are now up in the air as to whether they'll be developed. California's leading the nation. We're doing great guns, but the future beyond 2030 is unknown. It was anticipated that if we were going with what was anticipated, AI demand, 25% more energy, that by 2030, we would have brownouts in residential power because of the fact that AI will be using so much. The industry with the data centers, creators of AI, will counter and say, we're going to create our own power. We're going to put solar on these data centers. What's not being said is that in the evening, after dark, unless you have massive batteries, you don't have power. That means you're going on the marketplace to buy power, which all power companies do. It's called resource adequacy. You can't just let things fail. And that price of that power is driven by who can pay the top dollar. So that not only could we be headed towards brownouts, but all of our residential electricity costing more because of the demand. That was forecast to 2030. They're now starting to say it's going to happen sooner because AI is just accelerating so rapidly. So why am I saying this? I'm not trying to throw a wet blanket on it. I think it's incumbent on all of us to understand what we're facing. I think it's incumbent on us to lobby that we need energy sources, and maybe we need to make sure that we let our elected officials know that we need to continue developing these sources. And because Brisbane is concerned with sustainability, I think we need to be conscious of this. So, thank you.
Frank?
Are we in the question phase now?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
we're in discussion or questions?
You can question, yeah.
Okay,
Kind
okay.
of free flowing here.
So I spent the last 20 years working for Fortune 500 brands in technology. And anytime we're talking about a plan like this, we always included, in my experience, something called a rollback section. So if you do have problems or experience problems, you can roll back to a prior policy, a prior system, prior access. You have an exit out, so you're not stuck. So everything here is about roll out. There's nothing here about roll back. I suggest seriously that the city kind of have that in their mind when we're talking about this, especially at the rate this is moving. So I got access to the city's Microsoft suite of products last December. Ingrid, that's probably right, December, yeah. And to see how far Copilot has come since December in its functionality and capability that we have access to is crazy to think. So it's just something that we need to keep in mind. I see here that you said we've got some ideas about the appropriate use of the AI policy. I think they're all great, everything that you included in your slide. The one I think that maybe you just wouldn't spend some time on is you said you're going to continue to develop and adding to the city's internal resources and living documents. I don't think you're going to be able to keep up with it. I think that's probably a full-time job for somebody. So if one thing gets nixed on there, there's probably something at the county level or the state level you could reference there. And one quick comment, I guess. I went to the Council of Cities dinner recently in Atherton, and they invited this amazing Russian professor in that was talking about AI. She specialized in it, and she was specializing it in how municipalities across the United States are starting to use the AI. You guys, they have literally knocked a couple things out of the ballpark where it's working extremely well. Pothole prediction. It can predict where a pothole is going to appear based upon traffic patterns, which I think is amazing.
That's great.
It is
We know where ours are.
And then the other one that I thought was just fascinating is mass emergency 911 calls. They can apply AI to the voice tone, the speech pattern, keywords, and they can route that call based upon figuring out how urgent the call is. Not what's going on, not a heart attack versus a kitchen fire, but the urgency of the call and getting that to the right person to help them at the time.
Wow.
And I think that that's pretty amazing too. So I just wanted to call it, there are some really good applications. Meanwhile, my partner just sent me an article from MIT about how 95% of the projects are failing. So, it's a double-edged sword here. But anyhow, back to the rollback thing. I just think it's something that we should just make a section for and something to think about. That's all.
Thank you.
So on the one slide that you had, it showed the 90 full-time employees, and that if all of them had the Copilot access, it'd be about $34,000. Do you feel that all the 90 employees would use Copilot in a significant way?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah. Or maybe it's Jeremy.
I can take mine. I think the short answer is no. I think there's certain employees that would not necessarily use it on a regular basis. I think there's other employees like Molly that would use it extensively. A management analyst job is totally ripe for the use of AI as a tool. I think it also is just going to come with our own experiences and understanding the tool's advantages and where it can be useful. I've used it very liberally. It's just ChatGPT. I wasn't part of this process, and I can see where it's helped me in certain ways, particularly creating staff reports and things of that ilk. But we just wanted you to understand what the cost could be if we wanted to go to something that broad. But no, I don't think that. I think there would be some employees that wouldn't use it on a regular basis.
Yeah, you know, I really appreciate you putting this on the agenda and sharing this with us. Yeah, I can see a lot of cities just like, this is a tool, and it's just like, you know, using Microsoft Word, and they just go to town. And you deliberately wanted to create guidelines and share that information with us, and because you know, you hear the stories of how the technology is, you know, is great in some areas and causing havoc in other situations. And you know, the best way to deal with something is to have good lines of communication and to be transparent. And I like that that's in the mission statement. And I personally, I don't use it. Once in a while I'll use Grammarly. I don't know if that's real. You know, that's kind of like the little kid, you know, co-pilot, I guess. And, you know, I'll use it every now and then just because it's annoying, you know, because I don't like the red lines and, you know, whatever. And then it blurs out. And it's like, okay, I dismiss that and I just write it the way that I think it should be written. But I don't do the type of like significant writing and reports that you all do. And I could just see where that would just be such a valuable tool. But like we've mentioned, you know, you want to make sure like the stuff that you get, like we get, is legit, right? That it's accurate. And not to say that humans don't make mistakes, they do too. And sometimes it's, you know, it's written as like, hey, you know, this is wrong, you know. And so in perhaps in some ways, what you've kind of laid out kind of adds an additional layer of scrutiny that perhaps utilizing Copilot gives us a better product that we can evaluate and make better decisions with. So, yeah, so thank you for that.
Pointing us back to the rollout in the ongoing education and training, I do hear, I think, two themes. One is some level of interest and excitement associated with where this is going as it relates to how the city uses it, and also words of caution and to be thoughtful about that approach. So with the council's permission, just related to you know, issuing Copilot accounts, we'll have a further conversation related to that. But my sense is we'll do that more judiciously and concentrate in those areas where we know that there isn't a, you know, legal risk associated with it, maybe less sensitive materials, particular staff members. That'll help us understand more how this is going to be used. So I think that was maybe the primary thing. I don't know if there were other things you wanted to make sure that we caught tonight, but I just wanted to pull that one out because we sort of explicitly stated it.
No, it was great. Thank you.
Should we open it up to public comment?
Well, I mean, this is, you know, we can. If
'Cause
there's
it's new
anyone in the
business.
audience, okay, looks like we do have a member. Okay, so
There's a hand raised.
there is. So CMF, Ingrid, if you can help her. Okay, if you could unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, hi, this is Chris Flakowski. While I really deeply appreciate the effort to put guardrails around this, I want to support the concerns that have already come up. Some of the wisest words I have heard uttered about AI are from Karen Howe, who wrote a book called The Empire of AI. And she says, AI is such an interesting word because it's sort of like the word transportation, in that you have bicycles, you have gas guzzling trucks, you have rocket ships, and they're all forms of transportation, but they serve different purposes and they have different cost benefit trade-offs. And to me, the quest for artificial general intelligence has the worst trade-offs, because you're trying to build fundamentally an everything machine, but ultimately it can't actually do all of those things. She's talking about ChatGPT or your Microsoft product. And she goes on to say, but there are many, many different types of AI technologies that are hugely beneficial. And this is the task-specific models that are meant to target solving a specific well-scoped challenge, something like integrating renewable energy into the grid, weather prediction, drug discovery, on and on. I won't finish her quote, but I will mail it to you. But that goes back to what Frank had said about it being extremely valuable in these targeted uses. But when you're talking about general intelligence, and even the percentages of accuracy that have been quoted in this meeting alarm me. We know it's going to be wrong a significant amount of the time. So that comment about Prop 65 and where the designation that this was created with AI, that's not really fair, because we can put more meaningful distinctions onto these designations. You could say the data, the data in this article or this letter or this document was derived from AI. Or you could just say the editing. You could have those kinds of distinctions made that would help the reader understand how dependent you are on AI. But I'm really concerned here, and I appreciate the idea of a rollback plan. Sorry, I'm not very clear tonight. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Chris. Okay, anyone else online who would like to make a comment? Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. So if there's any further direction that you'd like to give staff, or do you feel like we've given staff enough to come back with?
Yeah, I think the next steps for us is identifying particular staff members that we think can utilize the tool in a targeted way, and start to try that out and see where that takes us. Thoughtful as it relates to the education process for those people who are participating. And we will come back at the appropriate time to discuss what we found and how it's going.
Great. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well
Okay,
done, Molly.
moving on to staff reports. Item J, City Manager's Report, city updates and upcoming activities.
Thank you. I'm going to focus tonight on upcoming activities. This weekend is a busy weekend. 9 to 12 is Coastal Cleanup, 2025 Coastal Cleanup. That will be at the Brisbane Marina near the Fishing Pier and Dock 6, and that's from 9 to 12. Then from 12 to 3 is the Marina Festival at the Yacht Club. So we hope people can attend that as well. Teen Night, as we do, is on September 24th, and that will be at the Sunrise Room. And although we'll have another opportunity to announce, October 4th is our annual day in the park. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, City Manager Dennis. Countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Anyone want to put out a county one? No. Okay, Frank, because I know you. Oh, you're not the only one calling.
Good.
I have a bunch of feel-good stuff tonight. San Mateo Library JPA Governing Board meeting. Just some updates from the meeting. We did adopt the 2025-26 budget at roughly $100 million. I have to say I'm completely impressed at the level of ownership that leadership staff has, and it's just run so well. So it's just some super positive developments in outreach and programs. The libraries had an extremely successful summer. The Maker Mobile reached over 75 elementary students and 900 students at summer camps, focusing on locations that were not near a physical library. Again, we've got a few Maker Mobiles. That's pretty fantastic. Our new bookmobile, which is under contract, construction's about to start on that. These are like $500,000, $600,000 vehicles that are custom to the library, and they're extremely cool. Our new one's our first hybrid, and it is queued for production. Production will start in fourth quarter, and it will be delivered in June of 2026. I'm super excited to see this. I just want to call it again, these libraries are so well managed. The combined total of the interest earnings for fiscal year 24-25 was $2 million in interest for the library. So they're well managing their assets. And last but not least, they just took their annual employee engagement survey, and strong results. 92% of our staff are proud to work in our libraries. I think that's really good. So all feel good stuff. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Councilmember Kern. Councilmember Mackin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CCAG, going to update you on Prop 63, the transit bill. It did pass the State Assembly and the Senate last week. It awaits the governor's signature. Really important to know, this is not going to become a law with a tax. It only authorizes the creation of a transit agency, Bay Area Transit Agency. The proponents of the bill now need to dispatch a lot of people to go gather signatures, what you're used to seeing, to get it on the ballot. It's going to become a citizens' initiative in order to either pass or fail the sales tax. The reason they approached it this way is the legislators were aware the advantage of a citizens' initiative to approve the tax is it only requires 50% plus one approval. So it has a greater chance of passing. Approval will be subject to the voters in all the cities and counties who opted into the measure. So, for instance, if all the voters in San Mateo said no, but all the voters in the rest of the counties and cities in the Bay Area Transit Group vote yes, it passes. And then we are still obligated. We have no way to opt out. So we have to live by whatever happens by the entire group of cities and counties voting on it. Many of the accountability measures requested by CCAG and Assemblymember Pappen were in fact incorporated into the bill, while other items disputed by San Mateo County were not. Case in point, our request to decrease our contribution to Muni was not granted. We were talking about 3% contribution. They made it 5%. Oversight committee, oh, I see. The oversight and accountability provisions were added with the creation of an adjudication committee, but petitions by the committee to withhold funding, which would be findings regarding subpar service or quality standards, cleanliness, cannot be filed for 2 years after voter approval of the tax measure. That's something that CCAG wanted available immediately because they felt there were problems historically with accountability on the part of some of the transit agencies. Also, there's what's called return to source funding. That's noting what portion of taxes collected will be returned to our county. The CCAG Legislative Committee was not satisfied with vagueness of the funding as written into the bill, citing that it was particularly unclear about whether we could apply this funding to microtransit, as is badly needed within the county. We hear about the need for microtransit in Daly City, Pacifica, and Brisbane. CCAG will be writing a position letter on how Samtrans would use return to source funding as a comment on the ballot measure if sufficient signatures are gathered to put it on the ballot. The CCAG board, for the time being, chose not to take a position at this time. And then there's one other thing happened at the CCAG meeting, and I don't know how much detail to go into. Ingrid, if you could give the council copies. We had a presentation, you may have heard, of joint venture Silicon Valley. It is funded by many county organizations, the county, CCAG itself, and they published the Silicon Valley Index, which I discovered and I've always found a really fascinating document. So I'm giving you some basic findings that they're publishing ahead of time as to whet your appetite. But just some very quick facts that were revealed at the meeting that talks about employment in the county. Employment has been fixed in the county for 3 years. It hasn't increased or decreased even with COVID. So you hear about 75,000 layoffs since August 2022. And what they found is that of those layoffs, 13% were tech workers, but comparing it to the big dot-com bust, that was a layoff of 350,000 people losing jobs. And what they also find out, with the 75,000 layoffs, most people laid off are back at a job in 3 to 4 months, which is remarkable. The tech companies have made record profits in our county, $25 trillion. Record profits never before seen in tech. Artificial intelligence has now garnished the highest share of venture capital investment. It was 80% of venture capital. The most intense investment of venture capital is all in the Bay Area because of AI. As far as income and wealth, Silicon Valley, of which we're considered included, there are 154 billionaires. Lots of millionaires, 145,000 millionaires. And most people assume the money is all in real estate. And that's not true. When they cite the wealth, they're talking liquid wealth. We have a thriving economy, but it's, of course, you may know, it's not translating into wealth across the board for everybody. Households in the top 10% hold 71% of the wealth. Households in the bottom half hold 1% of the wealth. A couple other median home prices. We have the highest rents in the country. The cost per square foot here is double the rest of the country, whether you rent or you own. Over the past 5 years only, income needed to buy a house has increased by 54% since the pandemic. It's now considered required income to buy a house of around $370,000 in Silicon Valley. In terms of politics, we've become increasingly purple. Tech they conducted surveys of population. They said that tech is being lumped in as the elites. Surveys show the population is very angry at tech, being blamed for Bay Area problems. The conservative coalition in Silicon Valley grew 43%. That was reflected in votes for Trump. Kamala Harris got less support than in 2020 in the last election. The good news is that we fared extremely well during the pandemic, despite the rest of the country having problems. And parting comments, and you'll learn more when the report is actually, the full report's issued, is that our economic success is also a source of our potential peril. So some ominous cautionary words. It's a very interesting report. I urge you to read the whole thing when it comes out.
All right. No, thank you for that, Councilmember Mackin. That was really interesting. Mm-hmm. So I had a couple of county-wide meetings. Commute.org was this morning. It was mostly financial stuff in regards to the organization. However, we did have a discussion about hosting a bike workshop. So this is something that the TA has asked Commute.org to implement, and they're looking for cities that have a large parking lot, and we have a large parking lot out at Sierra Point, and so they're excited about potentially partnering with Brisbane to do a bike workshop because it's a commuter organization. It's for people, teenagers on up, though I'm sure we wouldn't turn any family away that had small kids. So I'm going to be reaching out to you about that, Jeremy.
Mr. Mayor, a question on that?
Yeah.
When you say bikes, is that going to include e-bikes?
Good question. That question was not raised during the meeting today.
And if you have another commute.org meeting, could you raise that? Because the little bit I know now of e-bikes, because I've been reading about them, is that there are 3 types, and the highest grade bike goes 28 miles an hour, which for someone who's not old enough to get a driver's license scares me a lot.
Sure.
Because I see them on sidewalks, and I've seen them in streets with kids that are 13 and 14 who I have doubts whether they're really responsible enough to be doing that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. You know, I mean, commute.org, yeah, their mission is to, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and micromobility is part of the overall strategy. But yeah, as the bicycles become more like motorcycles, electric motorcycles, yeah, where do you draw the line?
Well, they're valuable for adults commuting. PCE has given lots of rebates, but I think the parents maybe would benefit from what they don't know, that there are 3 different types and what the hazards are.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then I was also at the San Mateo County Emergency Operations meeting, and, great annual report, trying to be more proactive in how they address environmental and man-made disaster situations, whether it's earthquake or fire or terrorists. So just implementing technology as it comes online and utilizing AI. One of the things that they asked all the cities to do is to have more of an outreach for SMC Alert. And I know that we've been putting that in the blast and other ways of communicating with our constituents. However, we still have a long way to go. We all get the text messages, and they're very helpful, but sometimes they're not for our area, and sometimes they're Highway 92. And I guess if we were thinking about having lunch at Half Moon Bay, that might be helpful, but so they're working out those types of bugs. However, one of the things that was an issue, and I'm trying to resolve, is that their meetings were the 3rd Wednesday of every, of the month, and they've put the meetings back to Thursdays, the 3rd Thursday of the month, which of course now Brisbane will not have an opportunity to have a representative at the table. So there was a little bit of a discussion, and yeah, it's tough when you're trying to advocate, but people like how things used to be. They like the meetings on Thursday nights, and some council members supported Brisbane, but it passed. And it was interesting that it passed because the chair, who has other meetings, Lisa Guthrie, she said she can't attend. And the board still passed moving the meetings to Thursday, which basically eliminated her from being able to attend. So, but I'm pushing, I'm going to see if we can continue to have the meetings on a different night than Thursday, the 3rd Thursday of the month, so that we can have representation. So I'll keep you posted. All right. So anybody else?
I have a question. Jeremy, is this the point where I can request an item for a future agenda?
Please.
So I'd like the council to consider revisiting our ordinance as it relates to real estate signs and the time frame in which they are able to be on our sidewalks. Because as I understand it, it says they are allowed to be up day of the open house. But I'm seeing lately that someone may have an open house Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now they're up 3 days in a row, middle of the night. They're not moving. So I'd love to see what the pleasure of the council is on what the council feels is appropriate for how long an open house sign should stay on the sidewalk. So if the council is open to looking at that.
So do we currently have an ordinance that's in place that's not doing what it needs to do?
It isn't doing what Councilmember Davis is requesting. Yes.
That's what she wants. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, who would enforce that?
It would be a mix of our code enforcement officer, but more likely it would be the PD on the weekends because our code enforcement officer isn't here.
I was going
Would
to
be
say, and the
based
code
on
enforcement
complaint.
officer does not work nights.
No, so it would be PD.
Could be, people calling a complaint or whatever. There are some other cities, and maybe for the staff report, staff can present what other cities do, but I know there are some cities that have certain windows, or, if someone's left a sign up for a prolonged period of time, it'll be confiscated. You have to pay to get it back. Pay $100, get your sign back. But I know that there have been, back when Clay was here, there were some agents that Clay had to speak to several times, and no regard from them. So I think that we need to maybe look at something else.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would concur with that coming. I think it might be worthwhile to look at everything we have regarding signs. People putting up signs temporarily on public property, just to see if there's something else maybe we haven't reviewed for a while. And it might have nothing to do with anything else, but as long as we're doing that.
So if it's of the pleasure of the council, we'll put it on the agenda. Are we good with that? Okay, all right. And, so at our last meeting, Councilmember Kern suggested 2 items to be agendized, and Councilmember Mackin suggested one, and this evening, you are, Madison. I think it's great that council members want to request things, and I'm wondering if there's kind of a process, because I think you asked a question: is this the time? And is that something that the council would want to discuss? Like, putting
You mean
things
to
on the agenda?
look at the process for requesting things to get on the agenda?
Yeah, so, because you could see where if there was one council member say, I want this on the agenda, and then another council member said, I want this on the agenda. And, we had 2 items tonight, and they took 2 hours and, 15 minutes to get through those 2. And, just making sure that we, allow enough time for the other things that come before us. So I'm just, trying to see if the council is willing to discuss some kind of protocol for how we bring those items forward and when we put them forward. Because we were able to address your item in one meeting, which was nice, and depending upon what's on.
No,
Not
we
really.
didn't.
Can you address it at the last council meeting with the item that you wanted to put on the agenda?
No, I brought it up and we talked about it tonight, but we didn't come to a conclusion.
No, but I
Oh,
mean,
the
you asked
frequency.
you said you had 2 items.
I had 2 items and we brought forward one of them.
We
tonight.
brought forward one of them, yeah.
So
Yeah.
very next meeting, that you were saying like the time in which we were able to get to it was quick.
Yeah, that's
So
what I'm
on
saying.
this one
Yeah,
item,
yeah.
it was way quicker than I was expecting, but yeah.
But that might not always be the case,
Yeah.
of course, right? And so,
I think it might be up to staff to say.
If I can
like,
offer
this
a
is
few
where my
words,
head
for cities that have more of a procedure or policy associated with putting things on an agenda, it's typically if 2 council members request it, it could be automatically placed. And then there's some discretion that the city manager would have about when to bring that forward, because if there's a amount of staff resource that's required to put it together, so some flexibility is usually required from the CMO or to the CMO. But what some cities do is they literally put on their agenda an item that says call for future items, and there could be no call. Like, you could just go through it and go nothing tonight. So that could address what Councilmember Davis was suggesting. But if, the practice has been just a very informal discussion, and if there's nods, that's enough for staff to move forward. That works for us right now.
If I may ask, are we saying that we always have to have 2 council members?
No. I was saying
what you
that's
told us in an email once.
that was my suggestion on a
Okay.
path forward, which wasn't formalized.
Okay.
that was intended to be a process by which if there was an item, not just an agenda item, but some other topic, if two council members wanted to work on it, they could do a colleagues memo, but we never fully implemented that.
So perhaps what we need to do is move to a future agenda to work out the protocol of who gets to put and when they get to put things on the agenda. I mean, I think that would be a good thing to look at the overall protocol for that for the council.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, right? Because you could have one council member say, can you put this on the agenda? And then the next meeting, hey, I'd like to have this one on the agenda. And then, you just like, when do you stop? Right, so it would be good to have like some guidelines.
A protocol, yeah.
A protocol, so, all right.
So does this mean I have to wait until the protocol is adopted
No,
to
not
get this item
at
on the
all.
agenda?
I mean, you brought it up and there didn't seem to be any,
It's gonna be about 6
opposition.
months, Madison.
Okay.
All right, so, does anyone want to report out on any of the subcommittees that they were on? Okay, and then we have some upcoming subcommittee meetings, right, it's in the packet. Written communications, Ingrid?
Correspondences were received from CDP, your city's reporting benefits if you submit by September 17th.
We can't hear you or understand what you're saying.
We received correspondence from CDP, your city's reporting benefits if you submit by September 17th. And that was sent on Thursday, September 11th. And we also received correspondence from Kim Folian regarding 918 BCC meeting agenda, new business item H, and that was received today.
All right, thank you, Ingrid. All right, oral communications, number 2. Anyone in the audience like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? Thank you. Anyone online? I don't see any hands raised. So we will
Oh,
adjourn.
wait, one went up.
Hands raised from CMF.
Chris?
Hi there, thank you. Yeah, I just want a quick item. If we're going to do a bike event at Sierra Point, great idea. We have big parking lots. It would be really wonderful if we had a safe way for people elsewhere on the peninsula to get to that location, i.e. a bike lane along Tunnel Avenue so people coming up on Caltrain can actually safely get to that location. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Excuse me. All righty. Anyone else? No hands are raised. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
At 8:51.